Thank you for joining us today, Rocky. If you could introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Great. Thanks for having me. My name is Rocky Motwani, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Cyphlens.
And we've actually been friends for more years than I think either of us would like to say at this point.
Yeah.
But you've had quite a storied and career with like Alton. Can you get a little about your background?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as it relates to fintech, I spent about 10 years at JP Morgan as a managing director in their transaction bank. And I like to describe the transaction bank as fintech before it was sexy, right? That's when we used to call it all corporate payments, wires, escrow, etc. I got kind of the tech bug or the startup bug in 2014. I met a famous VC. He's got a lot of crypto, and he met me. And he says, "Look, Rocky, if you ever want to shoot your brains out because you work at a large bank, you should come and start your own thing, and I'll invest in it." And that was the impetus I needed. 6 months later, I was sitting in his offices, bouncing ideas off him, which led to the co-founding of Chico. So it's the only fintech to buy a Fed Reserve Bank, OCC chartered bank, still running, putting money into treasuries, and I did that for about a decade.
Wow. That's quite a story, and I'm glad you didn't shoot your brains out
Yeah.
at the bank. But I imagine that you know it was still was quite a leap to go into the startup world.
Yeah, no, 100%. Look, I've got plenty of advice for folks. One is don't do it, and then two is you better do it. It is the thrill of a lifetime, but the risk, the reward, the ups and downs. But what better place to be, right? If you look at fintech over the last decade, to be kind of at this intersection of tech and financial services and kind of all the momentum, it's just fun. And every day and every year is something new.
And as far as something new, I know you are working on something new. Yeah, talk a little about that.
Yeah, what's interesting over the last 20 years when I was working, at JP Morgan and then my own bank, what really kept permeating was cybersecurity, right? So much of the job was actually two parts to it. One was all the fraud, AML risk, and the other side was how do you stop sending money to the wrong people, right? And fraud has just been pervasive. And my co-founder, Andrea, called me a couple of years ago. We'd worked together previously. He said, look, I built an alpha of what we think is the most cutting edge cybersecurity tool that we need to bring to market. Let's build this company together. So here we are building Cyclens. It's a one of a kind cybersecurity product and company. And we're bringing it to the financial services world.
Yeah, that's great. And uh, maybe oversharing here a bit, but I've always found the cybersecurity and just the security space to be quite overwhelming. Like how how did you get a handle on that, and like sort of how does Cyphlens dig into that?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think if you like payments and you like financial services, you're going to like cyber because it's as interesting and as confusing with all the different products, procedures, et cetera, right, that are out there. I think the one thing I say about cyber, right, as someone's kind of coming in it with a fresh pair of eyes, there's been nothing new in cyber in the last 20 years, right? It's basically more threat detection, more monitoring, a better way of doing an algorithm. Maybe now you've got some AI deep fake stuff that people think is kind of new around detection. But fundamentally, what Cypherns is doing is something fundamentally different. We are extending encryption to the last mile. Hasn't been done before. It's a new capability, letting humans basically create, share, and view encrypted images. Everything from their two-factor to how you look at an actual PDF document. So what excited me about Cypherns was that it's just different. It's a new paradigm. And I think that's what innovation is all about. When you're building on a technical edge and a new paradigm, we've got a fundamentally different way to apply cyber tools in the financial services world.
And I know it might be difficult to talk about, but can you capture a little about the experience with Cyphlens and why it might it's different and how it's different?
How it's different in terms of the product?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah, easily. So look, when you think about encryption, encryption is one of the strongest cybersecurity tools that we have. But encryption's been all or nothing. It's usually at the file level or the database level.
File level with the
So typically, if you were going to send me a document or some sort of big piece of data, you'd encrypt it, right? So when you get, think about it like it's almost like password protecting, right? You encrypt an entire file, right? But the moment, so at the file level, it's great. But the moment you need to look at that PDF, maybe it's your bank statement, maybe it's your healthcare record, right? The moment you open up that PDF and look at it, everything's in clear text because you have to be able to read it. Okay. And the moment it's in clear text, it's available to everybody. So you got to compromise your email. Somebody gets that file, they can open the file, they read everything. What we're doing is encrypting at the message level. So inside a document. we actually encrypt not an entire file, but if you open your bank account, I'm just going to encrypt your net worth, or I'm going to encrypt your social security number, or I'm going to encrypt your passport, right? Whatever that piece of information is, I'm going to do it at a message level, not at the file level. And I'm going to add all sorts of controls around it. So imagine you need to send a driver's license to your tax accountant. Well, but instead of sending him texting him a clear text version, you send him an encrypted version. Yeah. And then you can give him the key to decrypt that, leveraging his phone. Okay. It's a fundamentally new way to extend encryption to what we call the last mile.
That does sound quite unique and powerful. Uh, what has the market feedback been like in this survey? Anything you could talk about?
Yeah. So we are in POVs or proof of concepts, proof of values with about 10 clients at this point, large payment processors, large healthcare companies, some early stage guys too. And the feedback's been incredible, right? So the two things, one thing they tell us, we love the fact that you guys are taking existing technology that's been around, but you fundamentally redesigned it and reapplied it in innovative ways. And then number two, the user experience is incredible. This is the first tool that's being given to users, right? So cybersecurity has always been about the IT department doing something and you just kind of sit back and wait. This cybersecurity tool actually gets put into the hands of your users in a really incredible user experience. And so that feedback's been incredible. And we're starting to get real adoption.
That's wonderful to hear. And I know that you attended Fintech Meetup last year. Like, what was that experience like? And for Cyphlens and for yourself.
Yeah, it's different. We are a cybersecurity company, right? Coming to a financial services or fintech conference because that's where our customers are. Oh, and I think I called you last year. I said, look, Fintech Meetup, the only conference I'm doing related to this vertical. We've got a few verticals we target. I'm only doing Fintech Meetup. And here I am a year later, and I can tell you, I'm only doing Fintech Meetup, right? It is the only uh, financial services technology conference that I think is worth doing. I may go to some other ones just because now we've got more capital to spend in, but in terms of the opportunity, the content, that's offered, the people that you can meet, bar none, it's the best conference in the market. Happy to tell you why.
Yeah, yeah, we would love to hear.
I think the format of FinTech Meetup, organizing these short, discrete, and 15-minute meetings and guaranteeing that you're going to get a certain number of meetings. When I did FinTech Meetup last year, I think we got 25 meetings. I think out of 25 meetings, 23 were highly relevant, and the other 2 were just good networking opportunities. And I came away with an investor. Well, I wasn't actually looking for capital, but I ran into one of the leading fintech VCs in the hallway, asked me how it's going, and the conversation I had was I was talking about the 23 client meetings I had, and the enthusiasm I was getting, and the feedback I was getting, and kind of the ideas, and that led to, hey, I need to learn more and see where you're going, and it led to a chat.
Once again, yeah, very glad that we could be helpful. Um, looking forward to this year, like who you hope to meet, and like sort of what's next on the radar for Cyclones.
Yeah, I think last year was about discovery, right? We were talking to clients saying, hey, we've got an idea or a capability. No, I think this year is much more about true conversion, right? I think now we've got actual products in the market, you've got referenceability. So I think we're looking to get to those decision makers, especially on the fraud side, on all the scams that are going on, and talk to them about how our product makes difference. So I'm looking to meet more customers, right? And I think FinTech Meetup is a great forum because I know the buyers are there, and I know they're making time to actually meet with us and doing it in very, very specific ways that's super helpful.
That's great. And I want to and close off with because you have probably your length of time in the industry as well as the different perspectives in the industry is quite unique. Like any words of advice that you might have for the ecosystem in general, looking out.
Yeah, look, I think this is one of the most interesting ecosystems. I think over the last decade, there's been a lot of vaporware and a lot of crap, right? So I know that a lot of the companies that were at FinTech Meetup last year, but some of those aren't current around. And definitely, if I look back over the last 10 years in the ecosystem, I think a lot of that brush is getting wiped away. And now it takes a long time to understand an industry and the scale and the scope of it. I think there's enough experienced professionals out there now that we can start dealing with the hard problems, right? Not the same problems over and over again, but really bring new technologies to bear, challenge existing status quo, right? Things that that have taken a decade to think about. How do you solve global payments? Being now we're on the precipice of really figuring out new ways to do global payments, new ways to handle fraud. And I think the people who are going to solve those problems are going to be at FinTech Meetup. So I would encourage people not just to focus on the next quarterly goal or the next sale that you're trying to get, but start to plant the seeds for what you want the industry or the ideas to nurture over the next 2 years or 3 years or 5 years. So I think those conversations, they're happening now.
That's wonderful, Rocky, and I think that's a great way to end it. Thank you again for coming down and talking to us.
Thank you. I'm excited to be there. Thank you.
Look forward to it.